right, so this one is for you, Jabrain. Here we are, Orphaned Land, Unsung Prophets and Dead Messiahs. Now, this is a band I've never heard of, an album I've never heard of, and it's so unlike anything I've ever heard.
Yeah, when I went to look it up, like, looking at all the genre tags, I'm like, the fudge is this?
Yeah, there was, like, doom,
folk,
death doom.
Yeah, folk, doom, melodic death, just regular death.
Progressive. Folk.
Yeah, folk again. Like,
yeah.
It's got a lot of weird things. And, yeah, so they're from Israel.
Yes, and they're said to have pioneered, and this is a term that I've seen on multiple websites, they pioneered Oriental metal. I don't know what that means. I guess it comes from the Orient, but...
I feel like that's not accurate since they're from, like, the Middle East and not, like, Asia, but...
Anyway, but it's really interesting, the combination that they use of, like, almost symphonic elements.
Yeah,
but
I would definitely, at points, call this symphonic.
Oh, yeah.
I was going to say because, like, they have a heavy use of choirs and lots of different stringed instruments playing together.
Hardcore. So the first song is The Cave.
The Cave. How do you think it?
How do I think it? So The Cave. This is the first song on the album, and it's the second longest song on the album.
It's like, what, 8 minutes long?
8 minutes and, like, 10 seconds, I believe. And it is an album opener. Mm-hmm. My gosh, this tells you everything you need to know about the album.
Yeah, it's a pretty good summary, I think.
Yeah, because, one, it's very long and progressive. It's not overly progressive. Yeah. It's not like... They're not overly progressive, but they're just progressive enough to where they use interesting time signatures and interesting modes and scales together, and it sounds really interesting.
They kind of inherently, like, because of, like, the cultural background, and it inherently is an interesting scale to us, because, like, just our ears aren't used to, like, those, like, quarter tone trills and, like, the...
which is something I really wanted to get into.
The different scales that they use, and so it seems, like, very unique and interesting to us.
Yes, there's lots of Arabic scales, so sort of Phrygian stuff. So it starts with this sort of gentle, melodic vocalizing by either a woman or it's the main guy singer.
Yeah.
Who, by the way,
sounds like a woman.
The main guy singer is, like, vocally all over the place. He can do, like, growls, he can do, like, low talking, he can do normal high-pitched vocals. But it starts off with this very sort of gentle vocalizing.
And very soft, like, off in the distance. Just a woman, like,
over the slowly intensifying the string section. Mm-hmm. Then the verse finally breaks in, and you hear the guy's voice, and it's very...
And I was... Oh, sorry. No. I was kind of surprised when he started singing. I was like, oh, this is... For a metal band, he has a very pleasant, soft voice. Like, to me, it felt somewhere... Like, he could almost be the main character of, like, a Disney movie, like, with his voice.
Yeah, like I said, I was going to say, later on, there's a lot of songs that are very sort of... Where he's sort of much more going hard on his singing or growling. And in this, he's very sort of like... He's almost like he's, like, gently and intimately, like,
it's very
singing
pretty
to you.
Yeah.
And if it weren't for, like, layering and reverb and everything, I'm sure that him singing in person is very gentle, very soft, but in a good way. Not like it's not weak. It's not like just like talky or anything. And which is why it's a good juxtaposition with about 2 minutes in, he just goes like for like 3 seconds, he goes and gets his death metal growl going. And it's just there, and then it doesn't appear again until like I think it appears for like a second to 4 minutes, and then it doesn't appear for like the next until the next song. Yeah. Which, like I said, this song is 8 minutes long, so it takes a while for it to reappear again, which is great because it's really good for like sprinkling in a flavor.
It definitely, like, the songs, there was like a song or two that had like a lot of the growliness, and I felt like that wasn't
it doesn't feel like them. Like, it feels like they've moved away. It says they started off as more death doomy stuff, and I feel like they're moving away from that.
Yeah, and I definitely like this. Their vocalist, he definitely has a beautiful voice and should use it.
Absolutely. There's so many beautiful voices on this. So, at about 4 minutes in, like, the guitars come in heavy, and you're like, oh, this is metal. Mm-hmm. This is, because this album is really, like, it leans a lot on the folk, because they're just such good, like, classical folk music players. Mm-hmm. Like, every single thing they play, you're like, wow, I'm
just,
blown away.
It almost, that's why I said earlier, like, symphonic almost, because it's like the pure number of instruments that are present.
Yes.
Makes, like, I can't imagine seeing them perform live. Like, you have to have, like, several string players, and then your normal guitarist, and then, like, a small choir, and, like...
your bouzouki, your saz, your hour, or whatever it is.
And then, like, a normal drum set and then other kinds of weird percussion.
Yes.
Like, there's
it's really interesting.
a lot.
So let's
let's
finish off the cave because it's such a long song that we have to stop talking about it. So there's a child that speaks in it for 2 seconds, and that came out of nowhere because it's telling a story, Then there's a sweet solo, which is the first of many sweet solos on this album.
I feel like in comparison, like the first solo at least, in comparison to the second solo and in comparison to later solos on this album, is just kind of.
Yeah, I would say between 5. So at 5, there's a guitar solo, which is it's functional. Mm-hmm. Considering how much there is to the rest of the album, it's a slow, simple solo that's really good. Yeah. Then at 5:35-ish, there's a stringed instrument solo, which is a string. You maybe thought it was even some sort of.
Yeah, I'm not really sure
what instrument it was. If someone knows what instrument it was, please tell us because we would love to know. Everything on this album is so beautiful, and the mixing is so nice. I'd love to know what all the instruments are. And then at 6 minutes, there's this another sweet with lots of that trilling that we mentioned earlier, sort of almost this sort of microtonal singing trill, but in the guitar, and it sounded really cool and interesting. I really liked it.
Yeah, it was this guitarist doesn't really go for shredding at all, but it was slightly shreddy.
Oh yeah, he definitely goes speed. It's just like the singer goes for growling, for sprinkling in the flavor. This guy gets a little bit of that speed just to sprinkle in the flavor. I definitely did not resist the next song.
We do not resist. Did you want to resist this song?
No, especially because this song is metal right off the bat. This song, although it starts off with this sort of distant, what'd you call it, the kind of filter it is? It starts off with that record player sort of filter.
Yeah, I call it a record player filter. It's different than it's...
When you think of modern sort of metalcore and pop music, you think of the radio filter that's sort of
whereas this has a warm crackle of some sort.
You can feel an emotion to it. It has more emotion than a radio filter, which is just a tone. Mm-hmm. And so then the verse starts in, and he's using his death metal vocal, and it's almost like a gravelly voice more than a true death metal vocal, especially later in the song where it feels like he more wants to sing. I think, but yeah, the verses is just death metal vocal, and the guitars are really getting into it. On this one, they're really this is just metal with riffage and chugging, and it just feels really good.
Yeah, and there's I like about this song is that I feel like the percussion is more forward in this song.
Definitely.
There's the intro, which is you've got this far off beat, and that's all there is. And then in the middle of the verse, there's kind of it kind of stops, and then there's this thwap. I'm not quite sure. It's like a wood block or something that they're hitting. And there's just interesting little percussion moments.
Yes. So I would say because of the more just straightforward metal nature of this song, it's a lot simpler. It's got a more basic structure. It's not nearly as, proggy as the rest of it. I will say these guys are on Century Media, who, you might know Arch Enemy from. And this song reminded me a lot of a sort of folk metal Arch Enemy, in that when the chorus comes in, he's doing the death metal vocal, the
guitars are
the folk strings and the guitars are absolutely dictating what the melody of his growled vocal is, and it's awesome and it's powerful.
And then there's a choir also that does that, and I love when you have the growled vocals and the choir together.
Oh, absolutely.
That's one of my favorite things is putting harsh vocals against cleans at the same time.
No, well, that's what I was going to say. You can really hear them. The supporting chorus was in the cave, throughout. But this is the first time you really hear it. It sounds, I'm not sure if they actually did. And if you know, please tell us if they got an actual entire choir to sing for this, or if they somehow managed to mix it so that 3 people in the studio sounds like an amazing, powerful, full-built choir.
Yeah. Well, and it's there's no way, in my mind, there's no way that it's synth. That's real people.
Yeah, because they sing words later.
You can hear some individual voices in there, and
yeah, they definitely sing words and phrases later, so there's no way that it's synth. But
it's just awesome that they have a real choir.
Yeah, it's really interesting how it's there's a transitionary moment between the verse and the chorus where the choir just especially goes "Wah!" and the transition is so awesome. And then after the chorus, there's the clean vocal comes in for a second, and there's this sweet sort of guitar fill, and it's just such nice transitions from one piece. Mm-hmm. Unlike a lot of pieces where unlike a lot of songs where if the parts are different, they clunk in between. These transition so well because there's this sense of
And I think it partially because there's so many instruments that, like, some can keep doing their parts while the others are changing.
Absolutely. It blends so well. Yeah. It's such a good blend. And to kind of finish this, the end of the song switches entirely into a sort of...
And speaking of blending, what doesn't blend?
Yeah, it goes to this sort of sweet, gentle, acoustic, this folky section after the chorus, and there's, you know, it's bouzouki, it's violin, it's
and
some
it feels
sort of string
like it goes down to this, like, string section, and to me it feels like they're trying to, like, build tension a little bit, so I was totally expecting this to be the bridge, and then there to be, like, another more pumped up section afterwards, but then it just kind of ends.
Which, you know, I would say is the weakness of the section, especially because the next song is high energy again, I'm pretty sure. Oh, well, actually, it's high energy in parts. The next song is so interesting. The next song is In Propaganda.
In Propaganda, did it tell you what to think?
No. So this song, as I said, like, so the last song, you know, ended with a, like, low energy. Then this song starts off with this high energy. I would call it a sort of call and response, but it's really more of just an A-B thing between, like, these, like, everybody's in all together, and there's guitars, and it's riffing, and then it goes just to, like, the plucked, very stringy, folk instrumentation, and it goes, like,
just a single, like, from the whole band to just a single instrument, like, playing the kind of same melody.
And it goes back and forth between the two, so you get this, like, kind of call and response feeling. It's really cool, in my opinion. But then it immediately, like, way ramps down the energy, like, hardcore for the verse. This verse is very slow. It's mostly just the bass, the vocals, and the drums.
Yeah, which I kind of, in this case, I liked it, because I felt like the vocals were really, like, on display in this part, and it really, like, I loved the melody of the vocals. It was just very, like, I don't know, it just showed off his voice and his ability to do those, like, little quarter tone trills and, like, things that are very characteristic of Middle Eastern music.
Yes, no, it was absolutely wonderful. We got to see it on display, and it's interesting how, like, the chorus has this, like, lilting, like you were mentioning, that sort of, like, the flow of it, this lilting, beautiful string bowstring lead, and it's just so, like, almost calming and gentle and enticing to your ear that when the sort of post-chorus picks up or halfway between the chorus or whatever it is,
that's just second part of instrumental.
Yeah, it, like, the energy, like, kicks up to, like, 3 times as fast. Yeah, and
it suddenly becomes, like, major, and it's like, whoa, where did this come from? And it's almost like a dance.
Oh, like I would say it's extremely dancey. It feels like it's so much more energy. It feels like moving. It feels like running. It feels like
twirling.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's a great way to think about it. And it's interesting how, like, and then you have the group that comes in together and they're like, propaganda! And you're like, whoa, that are just our words. And it's just interesting how it shifts back to the low energy after that.
Yeah, because the structure of this song is just the soft verse, and then the, like, pumped up instrumental section, and then back to the soft verse, and then back to that pumped up instrumental section, and then it just ends.
Yeah, it kind of ends kind of unfortunately, because it goes like, done. And it's like, whoa, oh, God, I'm still stumbling over the fast section.
I guess that song only has A, B, A, B.
And there's nothing wrong with it. We'll have the intro, then A, B, A, B. Okay. And it's a great song, but, you know, it definitely wasn't seen by the all-knowing eye.
The all-knowing eye. Did this song know all about you?
I feel like it did. This song definitely is an excellent song. I quite thoroughly enjoyed this.
Now, is that just because of the guitar solo, or do you actually like the whole song?
I like the second half a lot. Actually, I like the first part and the second 2/4. Okay, so let's explain.
Like, yeah, so it's got this intro with, like, these awesome, like, acoustic harmonies, and
the drum is going like, and the bass is going like so it's like this heartbeat almost underneath, low heartbeat, carrying these beautiful and then
it starts going. It goes into this chord progression that's, like, weirdly uplifting, and it's like it's almost like a 4-chord, like, chord progression.
Yeah, very, very, very happy cleans with a lot of with a univibe or a tremolo on them, so that they're shimmering, and then, like, all the sonic space. You know, we usually say, like, a dream chorus fills the sonic space, but in this case, there was a keyboard going like, which
I hate,
and it was just passion. It just for this song, it didn't do anything because that sonic space is usually filled with a choir or something in this band.
Yeah.
Like, this band has shown, like, how much skill that they have in, like, balancing their tones. When you have this just, like, loud, shimmering keyboard noise, you're kind of annoyed by that. But you can only be annoyed for so long because of this sweet guitar solo.
That you have to wade through the kind of frankly kind of boring ballady biz
I guess
to get to the solo, which is the high point of this song.
This is like a slow jam, like classic sort of blues pentatonic-y. It feels kind of interestingly out of key. Because, not out of key, but it feels like... Because a lot of this other stuff is Phrygian and Arabic scales and stuff like that. And this is just like... I know it's Freebird, but it's just so, like, beautiful and slow. And it gets these, like, little... Like you said, just sprinkles in a little bit of that shreddiness just for flavor. And it just feels so good. And it's so, like... You just get the stank face. Like,
No, this guitarist clearly is a very emotive guitarist. Like
you were saying,
he's not Shredmaster 5000. He's not like going to throw a bunch of sweeps in there or anything. But like, yeah, I said earlier that he's definitely the kind of guitarist who, while he's playing, he's going to close his eyes and look towards the ceiling. But like, I'm sure he's definitely the type of guitarist to just like not even look at the audience and just kind of get lost in playing. And at least that's what it sounds like from hearing his solos.
And then he comes back full force, looking. I guarantee he looks straight at the audience because it gets like it gets this like minor key,
shockingly heavy.
Yeah, this is like pure like metal. It's got this sort of lilting. That was Pirates of the Caribbean because this had this sort of like that lilting piratical music feel. It had that very sort of back and forth sort of you want to swing your arm. Yes. And it was really awesome. And it had one problem, and that was that it had a lazy fade out. And it was like, you were doing so good with the slow jam solo and the sweet heaviness. And then,
and the thing is, with the riff they had for the heavy part, they could have just, like, stopped.
Yeah,
like,
it could have been...
They could have just, done the repeat and then, like, resolve it somehow. Instead of just, like, I don't understand the point of that lazy fade out.
I think it's because this whole song is supposed to be relatively low energy, which is why it's weird that they went to the heavy after. Yeah. But, what can you say? The next song, I can't come up with a pun for it because it's a word in another language, Yedidi.
Yedidi. Did you like it?
So this song is the shortest song on the album at 2 minutes and 33 seconds.
And it's also the only song that's not in English.
Other songs have non-English sections.
Yeah, it's true.
But this is the only song that's fully not in English. It has a lot of interesting groove to it. It feels like that there's a very ritualistic sort of dance that's meant to happen to it, I feel.
Well, it feels like, to me, it felt like a very walking beat, but like a groovy walk. Like... Dun, 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 and it's interesting because I felt like a lot of the instruments were generally in unison.
Yes, it was, like I said, it felt like everyone... knew this. That's why I said it was very...
It's like a marching band almost.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. Everyone's like playing together to create this like affectation of walking. It's this song feels, even though we don't speak the language that they are speaking, I feel as though the emotion is not lost on us. It's very driving. It's very...
and it feels like unifying somehow. Like I have no idea what the words to the song mean, but
yes,
based on the feel of the song, it's something about unity.
Beyond that, it's slow, and it has, especially in the second half, this sort of jamming quality with these great sort of like really high, folky sort of little riffs in it, like the very, very fast sort of bouzouki.
Well, it's interesting, because it'll have this like do 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 like throw in these little like trills.
And it's wonderful how even in such a short song with such a relatively slow beat, they can have such a display of like fine musical skill. And the problem is the song was so short, I don't really have that much to say about it. Especially because the next song has so much that can be said about it, because it's so long. Chains Fall to Gravity.
Chains Fall to Gravity. Did it make you want to drop your chains?
What?
I don't know.
Anyway, so this song is the longest on the album. It's the proggiest on the album.
I guess.
It's 9.5 minutes, basically, and it uses every second of that. It starts off with that record player...
Yeah, the, like, record player off in the distance sound, filter.
Whereas it was very scratchy, very warm, very...
And then on top of that, they're playing like wind noises.
Yeah, wind noises.
Which I really like because it kind of paints a picture in your brain of like an old-timey movie, like walking down the street and hearing like inside a shop or something, some music playing.
Yeah, it speaks of an older place and time. And it really feels like just ancient. It feels like that intro is what is inspiring the rest of the song. Almost like it's an old record that they heard and then like, oh, we have to write a song based on that. Yeah. And then, so it's a great buildup of the tension. So it starts off with that, and then some like classical folky drums, right? A hand percussion instead of a full kit. I mean, the full kit comes in shortly after, but the fact that it starts off with those old strings, the wind noises, the record sound, and the hand drums, it's just like, yes, I absolutely love the feel of this. And
then I feel with the verse, it kind of gets a little more generic. In the verse, personally.
So the verses are really simple, just sort of soft, sort of gentle, balladic sort of vocal.
Which is fine, but it just, like, it repeats the verse twice.
That's the problem, is that there's not a lot of energy, and it's very much the same simple melody.
For, like, the first, like, 3 minutes of the song, it's just, like, this...
It's a double verse, but granted, in the middle, there is this sort of, like... Yeah,
well, that almost bothered me, because... Because so you have like the first section of the verse, and then it goes like jun 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 da 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 or whatever, and so you think it's gonna like build up into something like more explosive, and then it just drops back into the verse, and I'm like, okay, well, got my hopes up.
I mean, granted, that it does do like ja 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 after that second verse, and it goes into the chorus, and the chorus is like worth it because it's that full choir being like ja da da.
Yeah, and it adds, of course, whenever you throw a choir on something, it adds epicness.
Yes, it's just, it feels so powerful and domineering and intense that it's a great, I'd love to hear like an actual choir do this in person because I feel like it would just hit you like a wall. And it's really interesting how it goes from that powerful choir part of the chorus to, once again, just like him doing a sort of very triumphant, growing, powerful, da-da-da-da. Yeah. I'm so, like, major and cheerful and, like, life will be beautiful.
I wouldn't even say forever. Cheerful. I would say, like, uplifting.
Yes. Yes, very different things.
They are.
And then in the post-chorus, you know, because you go all this big building up, like, hardcore choir, and then his really triumphant vocal, it goes into this sort of, like, pleasantly acoustic sort of, let's get back to that place we were before.
Yeah,
let's get back to that
like,
verse
solo
area.
String instruments, and then there's some harmony with them, and it like slows down even more to just like a single acoustic little melody with the wind sounds again, and it's like, oh, we're back on that windy street. Okay,
but that's exactly with that simple guitar melody. You almost feel like, oh, this is the development. This is their addition. This is their touch. This is them and their remembrance of it, I guess, is how I feel about it. That could be entirely untrue. But then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, the metal comes in.
Yeah, then there's this sick drum fill that, like, introduces the guitar solo. Yes. Which is good.
And the guitar solo has such interesting timing. It has interesting pauses, or it'll just go like... And you're just like, whoa, what? That's so strange. The timing there is so interesting. And it sticks in your mind. Because you're just like, that phrasing is so unique and really cool, and I thought it was absolutely like fantastic, and then
and then after the solo, then like the choir comes back in, and they like come back in like kicking it up a notch.
Yeah, there's like a guitar lead under it too, and everything. So everyone's really just.
This is definitely a great example of like the last repeat of the chorus, like bringing it home, you know.
Now I will say, it does have one big, huge, major problem, and that's...
the spoken word part.
So there's a spoken word part that comes in for just, like, 10 seconds, and that's whatever. You know, there's spoken word parts in some of our favorite songs, like, you know, on the album Justice for All. You know, there's spoken word in there.
Yeah, sure.
But the thing is, the poetry's just there for a second, and it doesn't appear until, like, later songs. They bring that sort of thing back. But in this song, I feel like it doesn't really add anything. It kind of
sits... And I feel like we've commented before that the mixing on this album was really good, but I feel like the spoken word just kind of sits on top of the mix.
I 100% agree. It feels like it was added as an afterthought. But then the whole album just stops all the metal, and then plays the same thing it did in the intro, that sort of... these gentle folk... strings with the windy recording sound,
which I really like because it brings it full circle.
It's
and
sandwich.
Like, yeah, and it's nice because like we had, you know, that at the beginning, and then we referenced it again in the middle of the song, and then it brings it back at the end, and so it's like, oh, it's a very you can see the common thread through the whole song, which my problem with a lot of really long songs is that they like
you lose it
is
somewhere.
that they go all over the place and there's like no like you are end in a totally different place than you started. And I like this song is a good 10-minute song insofar as you can have that with its repeated themes that aren't exactly the same,
No, absolutely. I think this is 10 minutes long and it doesn't really waste any time. The double verse is a little hard, but other than that, I think it really is a continuous good song that doesn't feel like, oh, you could cut that out and make it into a riff for its own song, like you hear a lot of these.
It definitely felt like one complete idea.
Speaking of complete ideas, Like Orpheus is the next song.
Like Orpheus. Did it make you feel like Orpheus?
I don't know who Orpheus is. I know he's some sort of Grecian character. I don't know though.
I don't know.
So this song is interesting compared to a lot of the other ones because
it's cool.
It contains a lot of unique stuff that doesn't appear elsewhere on this album.
Like the intro guitars, I really am a fan of. Like, it felt more like an actual riff, I guess.
Yes, it was these big, powerful, sort of slidey, awesome like leads, and
then it threw some harmony on it.
Yeah, and it just feels huge, and behind the whole time you hear like that sort of choir going, and it's just this big symphonic, powerful intro that's just great.
And then when it changes to the verse, it's kind of like jarring in a good way because it's like one guitar pans all the way to one side and then it just drops into like kind of a quiet intensity, and then the singer, he's singing in like his low chest voice for once. Like it's not a growl, it's just him singing. It's like a
deep, gravelly sort of jogging. And
it's singing, definitely.
I mean, I say talking because I mean like his melodic control is more than I would have that I could demonstrate just there. And it's this like the verse is this sort of metal guitar like trim picking, and it's low vocal that isn't growling, and it feels very intense and metal.
Yeah, and it feels darker than a lot of the previous songs because like a lot of their melodies are kind of like uplifting with a hint of like darkness, whereas this one's just kind of like more
this is definitely
on the dark side,
right down in it. On the dark side. Yes, and that's why it's interesting because it goes into a clean vocal for the chorus, and that once again in that very sort of uplifting style, and then all of a sudden after the first chorus it goes into a second chorus or chorus part 2 or whatever,
part of the chorus, which is awesome.
It's pure power metal. It's a completely different vocal than he does like anywhere else in this album.
I asked when we heard it, I'm like, is this a different singer? Like, he sounds like a different person.
Yeah, and he gets this high-pitched, belted, sort of like...
It's just like a power metal chorus. There's no other way to describe it.
And it's just wonderful. And so, and this song is very, very standard structure. It does like that verse, chorus, chorus part 2, verse, chorus.
Yeah, so it's got it's just a funny thing to transition from that like power metal chorusy bit back to like the spooky dark verse. It's like, well, all right then, that's really interesting. And
then the bridge, which like this song has a very detectable bridge. Some of them are because they're so long with multiple parts, but this song has a very detectable bridge where it has a sort of like muted, chuggy like thing with some like folky sort of. I say folk shred going on, but it's really
I like
intense.
it because it's got that like this like muted guitar that's like it's alone for a little bit, but then there'll be like a bleedy sort of business squeedles with the various other instruments.
Yeah, yes, the traditional folk instruments. Like they're sort of like not Spanish guitar style, but it's just such a fast, precise, almost neoclassical way of playing that that I can't help but call it like folk shred because it's just so good that way. And beyond that, I really want to move to the next song because I love how pretentious its title sounds.
All right.
Which is Poets of Prophetic Messianism.
Poets of Prophetic Messianism. Was it poetry?
It was interesting melodically as opposed to other songs. So
yeah, this song doesn't have any solo singing. It's entirely choral.
Yeah,
and there's vocals.
And what's interesting is this is the first song that has to my ear was detectable specifically a men's choir. We both commented on this.
Yeah, we both were like, oh, I wonder why they chose to have just a men's choir there as opposed to previously they all have mixed choirs.
Yes, and in this one also, this is another song that's not in English. So it starts off with this sort of like soft, nostalgic, sad acoustic guitar playing this very sort of haunting, like reminiscent melody. Like I couldn't help it while I was listening to it. I have no memories of sad acoustic guitar, but I couldn't help but be like, oh, I'm filled with this intense thing. And this very sort of almost, I would say, a menacing violin over the top. It's got this sort of like dark edge that's kind of like haunting in like a scary way.
To me, like this song definitely feels like something you sing. It like you sing / play in like an ancient church. You know, like a big stone like sort of cathedral, or like just something that's been there forever, and you're kind of reverent towards it.
Absolutely, you know? It just, like I said, once again, they like we mentioned it before. There's this feeling of drawing from an ancient creative source for this writing. I feel, and like whether it's a church or that old recording, it feels like something like this comes from olden times. I don't know how to describe it beyond that. I
mean, well, that partially comes from like using instruments that have like been around.
Grandpa's guitars.
Yep.
So this is interesting. A lot of the percussion in this, it has a lot of like a lot of hand cymbals, a lot of like jangly percussion in it that I thought was really interesting and fun, and it felt very. Once again, we talked about like how his voice had occasionally that sort of intimate feeling where it's close, and I feel like using this sort of more hand percussion stuff makes it feel more like you're with a smaller group, even though you know like this requires a whole orchestra and choir to sing.
Yeah, which is like an interesting feel to combine those two things, especially when you have like the close-up percussion with like there was one time where there was just one woman singing, but it's like very off in the distance.
It's once again that vocalization of the
but very quietly in the distance before the like whole choir comes in, and so it's interesting to have the like feel like the instruments are closer to you than the singers.
Absolutely, and it's really interesting because like I said, at first it's the men's choir, and it's this very haunting sort of, you know, as you said, cathedralian sort of echoey, deep, resonant vocal tone that's very low and very sort of like almost Gregorian or something. Mm-hmm. And then they add the full choir and later, and they add like the treble of the women's voices, and it's just it's so. I keep using the word haunting because it like hits you in your soul. Mm-hmm. And the song isn't very long. It's the second shortest on the album at like 2 minutes 56 seconds, but it's powerful despite that. I think
it definitely is.
It definitely leaves a few of the other songs behind.
Left Behind. Did you feel left behind by this song?
No, this song was excellent. So this song is great. I only had a few problems. I only had like one problem with it, and the rest is all like fantastic.
Yeah, I guess let's talk about the good parts first. Is that like it starts out with like a kind of memorable riff, the do 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 do. Yeah, like it's on this album overall, there aren't a lot of like riffs that stick in my brain, but that's one of the ones that I'm like, oh, do 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 do. I'm like that. I know what song that is off the top of my head.
And it's great, and it's interesting because his vocal in the verse is very sort of. Let's talk about the one problem was that his vocal in the verse has a very light, like that radio filter or a light fuzz or something on it.
Yeah, I didn't really get why that filter was there. But.
And it adds just a touch of grit color to the top of it, and just like, well, this just adds noise, and I don't really like it very much.
Well, and like I think that like the register in which he was singing like has like a quiet intensity, and I feel like that would have been brought out more without the filter on it. But quiet intensity is not what the rest of this song is about. Oh yeah, well that's just the verses. The juxtaposition. But then the chorus, the chorus is so powerful. I love it. Like I don't know. It's just something.
Yes.
He uses his full voice in like that perfect range for him, and it's powerful. So
let's talk real quick. It has this sort of lilting sort of offbeats, like, and then these women choir, who you can definitely tell several of the women are very mixed forward. You can tell because they're singing like "Beyond the North Star" is something that they say, and you can definitely hear their individual vocal tones, and they're singing beautifully and distinctly, which is really nice from a choir sort of sound.
Yeah.
And it's this very powerful rhythmic, like I said, those drums are just hitting and they're just driving. Mm-hmm. And then that is followed immediately by him singing how they're left behind. It's just that power metal vocal very similarly again. And it just hits so hard. Their group women's vocals against his male vocal. And then once they both get a long time to sing, they do a back and forth afterwards. And it's just such an awesome...
Yeah, this is a really well-constructed chorus.
It's just so awesome. And then... after like the awesome chorusy biz, and you go back to the verse and everything, there's harmonic guitar solo going afterwards, and then like some sweet riffing, and you're just like, dude, gosh, this
Well, and like there's this cool riff after the solo, which only was repeated like twice, but it's like you know how I like riffs that kind of have like a weird like off kilter timing, and like there's this riff after the solo that definitely had that, like it's like a do.
Yeah. Once again, he's so good with weird sort of timing things. Like I said, I mentioned it in the solos earlier. You're exactly right. That riff, like I said it's just with sweet riffing with great tone. It's so perfect how he gets that timing. I guess that's that sort of proggy time manipulation-y sort of thing.
But it like draws attention. Like, it makes you listen to it when it just feels slightly off. You know?
Yeah. Oh, gosh, everything about this song demands your attention. And
it's a great song.
So we have to move on to the next one, otherwise we'll just discuss about this one forever. So the next song is My Brother's Keeper.
I have to go back.
My Brother's Keeper. Was this song a keeper?
Half and half. Definitely. So it starts off...
Keep the instruments, leave the vocals?
So it starts off with this sort of ambient, distant talking, and I wasn't able... we listened to this multiple times, and I still haven't been able to comprehend what's being said. And I don't know if it's not in English, or if I just can't understand it.
I think it's just too kind of off in the distance ambient biz.
But then I literally laughed out loud at this part. And it's not because it's particularly funny. It's just the way he says it, and just being a fan of, like, action movies and all whatnot. He goes... Like, as if you're, like, something zooming up really fast, and goes... I have to go back. I'm like, are you from the Lost Island? And then it goes into this, even though that made me laugh because it was just so intense and serious and up close on the mic. After that, there's this...
this nice, like...
This awesome headbang. Like I said, it's we've always said, you got metal, you got a headbang. This big, epic, Arabic scale,
this feels like, something that you can have a group of people, like, march to,
Yeah, you feel like there's just such power in this. It's so strong. And then, like, that keeps going, and then there's this epic keyboard in the background, and there's guitar leads that are getting, like, some awesomeness guitar leads underneath it. Well, there's supporting, making it more interesting. And it's just such a powerful intro. That is
so disappointing when the verse comes in.
Okay, so the verse is really weird, because the drums are really good in the verse, and they're keeping it going.
And the bass is really good.
Okay, so let me say, we haven't mentioned this so far. This bassist is crazy good. Like, every single song, he's just up there like... It's just like, wow, the bassist, crazy.
But no one ever notices.
No one ever notices the bassist. No, but so the reason why the verse is weird is because he's just speaking as if he's reading aloud a short story in a sort of aggressive, violent
noir voice.
Yeah, in his, like, the Dame came across the bar. But anyway, it's just really, like, gruff, and, and at one point it has, like, a call and response with the guitar. Like, he'll say something like, da-da-da-da-da, and then it'll play something. And that's really kind of cool because it shows juxtaposition. But until then, the whole verse being taken up by his sort of, like, talky
which
voice.
is really just gets kind of monotonous. Even though at first it's nice because you're like, oh, I can hear, like, what the bass is doing. That's neat. Or, like, I can hear what the drums are doing. That's also neat. But then that gets old after, like, 2 verses of it,
Yeah, and so that's, that's why when we get to, like, the bridge, which is really interesting. Because this is the first one. There's one later that also has it. Where it's, like, it's the vocalizations again. Where he's just like, ah, and it's just like, clap, 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 clap. It's a bunch of clapping underneath. It feels very real. As far as percussion goes, because it wasn't like a hip hop clap, like.
No, it was like actual. Not, I don't know if it was actual clapping or not, but anyway,
like
it was. Yeah, it's kind of like a dance beat clapping too. It's like.
It's just really good. It was just really fun and interesting and unique for this, because My Brother's Keeper is such an odd song because there's so many parts in it that I really enjoy and parts that I really don't enjoy.
Yeah, I really didn't enjoy most of it except like the very end, where it kind of. Just things kind of
That's
stepped
such a
up a
D-bag
bit.
thing to say. I really enjoyed it when it ended.
I don't mean that. I mean like the last like maybe 30 seconds to a minute of the song. Mm-hmm. It just kind of stepped it up more because I felt like it just lacked after the intro. It kind of lacked intensity. I
agree. Although I will say the guitar solo was singing and beautiful and melodic, and it was very soaring and open. I know those are just a bunch of like generic sort of. It was big and like major,
huge.
It was enormous. No, it was beautiful and melodic, and it sung, and I quite enjoyed it. I wanted it to take my hand.
I think what is going to happen in the future is the dictators will...
Take my hand. Did you want to take this song's hand?
I did. So, this song's interesting. These people have a habit of starting their songs or ending them with...
Kind of talking.
Or most often a recording or something, it feels like. And this one, it was someone, I feel like I should know who it is, but I don't, talking about dictators and how they control people in society.
Yeah, and how specifically, I think it says if you want to rule forever, you must have the consent of the ruled. Yeah.
And it was all over this sort of like walking beat and guitars were going. But then when the song like starts in earnest, there's like we mentioned like riffs earlier. This one definitely
I love this riff. It's the
and it gets that sweet shrediness. And then because they couldn't just have the guitar showing off. They have the guy who's playing the folksy instrument. He gets the he gets his own riff like afterwards too. And it's these two really awesome like. That shows their skill so well, and like this is how we metal, and this is how we folk, and it's just they're so good together.
Yeah, and they complement each other very well because it's like similar melodies, but not exactly the same.
Although I will say that the vocals in this one are relatively simple by comparison to a lot of the other ones. They're back to that sort of more soft, gentler thing. And for me, when you compare it to how like hard that electric guitar went and those awesome drums,
I kind of like having like. I was kind of glad that there's a riff because I love that riff, the like heavy like whatever riff, but then you can't have that all the time, you know. So it's got this like punchy walking beat, but then you have to go back to those like soft languid melodies for a little bit and do some legato, not punchy business.
Which it's funny we're talking about that because then the chorus is just huge.
Oh yeah, I wrote it's very moving. Like it's just like emotional and
it's symphonic, it's orchestral, it's powerful, it's everyone working together to build these enormous vocal and musical chords that just they touch that part of you that music is supposed to touch. That part that makes you feel feelings against your will. And so it's just it was epic. I hate to throw around the word epic.
But it definitely has some solid epicness to it.
And I just absolutely loved it to death. There was a solo after this epic chorus, and it was really short compared to the other solos.
It was short, but it was still very emotive, like this guitarist is.
Yeah, this guy feels over notes.
Yeah.
Which is, he doesn't need he's quality over quantity, you know? Yeah. Absolutely, this guy's quality. Because he doesn't need to shred to like make you just once again. It's just like the chorus. You're just
like he can make you feel more with just one bend than another guitarist could do with 16 notes. You know?
Yeah, and it's just so like I really like it, and which is why it's even though it's so short. I'm like, oh no, it's so short.
But it's short and sweet, you know.
Yes. Then afterwards, there's this sort of female choral thing and this folk percussion going on. You have a lot more interesting drum sounds.
Speaking of the drums in general, like that one section, the drums really stand out. But in general, in the song, like there's lots of, it's very tom heavy, which I like because it's just makes it feel more hearty.
It's got a lot of rhythm to it. It's being dictated by the drums.
Yeah, and like when you do like your main like groove on the toms, like it makes it feel very like down deep in your core, you know?
Absolutely. Oh, and that the epic chorus had some groove on it, and those toms had some groove on it, and it was just really interesting, like how they played with that sort of. And I think that really helped it be so much bigger, and it hit you so much more in the feels. Was that it went with the off time? It went with the sort of whoa, I feel this in my whole body movement.
The only thing I didn't like about the song is it had more spoken word
sections,
in it.
Yep.
I know there's like whatever, you might like some poetry or whatnot, but it's like, could you set that to like music and not just say it?
Yes. Yes, I get what you're saying, but that being said, I think this song like totally earns its right to have as much talking in it as it wants.
Like I can overlook the like I just wrote that it was unnecessary, not that it was like a demerit. It just was kind of there for me. The spoken word didn't do anything for me.
Okay. Well, the next song is Only the Dead Have Seen the End of War.
Only the dead have seen the end of war. Have you seen the end of war?
No, I'm still very much alive. Although I'm sure a lot of the prog fans, after hearing this, would wish I wasn't. Okay, they're not death metal fans. If you'd like to go look at our, like, what was it, Morbid Angel video, multiple people who were death metal fans said they wanted to kill us. Yeah. So that was fun.
That's why they call it death metal, man.
I guess. So the song starts off with these big epic sort of epic chords, and then switches to these beautiful, like, lilting, smooth strings.
And then, approaching from the background is this siren.
This air raid siren. Yeah. And you're like, oh, this is terrifying.
Yeah.
And this isn't a beautiful string. This is like, this is like life going on while, like, death is happening all around. And then it breaks into the metal. Like, the metal just comes in something fierce.
Vocals on this track are the heaviest vocals on the whole album.
Yes, and once again, this track, he brings in a new vocal style, which I'm not sure about. We'll get to in a minute.
We'll get to it.
So the verse is that very sort of, he brings in the truth, it's great. Yeah. It sounds like what he's talking about, which is people getting dead, son.
Yeah. The only problem I had with, like, him doing that voice is that, like, there was, like, a part where the instruments cut out and he just, like, growled the title of the title of the song, but only the dead have seen the end of war. Like, it's just too many words to, like, growl.
Yeah, it's too long.
Too many words to do in such a break.
I understand it's a great quote.
Yeah.
Like, fantastic, but you could have worked it in better. I completely agree.
Yeah.
That being said, working it in better, this riff under the verse, it's this, like, scaly, like, heavy metal, pure, grit, balls and metal and steel, and it's just great. And I really, really loved it, especially with that death metal vocal over it. They just worked together to really emote, like, pain and fear and death and anger, and it's really terrifying. And that's why it's so weird when on, like, the second verse and the third verse,
he does this higher.
Oh, I wouldn't even call it higher. It's like he's trying to, like, halfway do it.
It's not higher. It's just, like, more breathy.
I said that it's kind of weak and breathy. It's like,
it sounds like he's wheezing.
Yeah, it's this, and I get it. Maybe it's like a war zone. Maybe he's coughing. Maybe he's breathing. I don't know.
I don't know. It's just a different type of vocal that he's doing that doesn't really work for me.
It's not melodic, but it's also not amelodic in a death metal-y way where it's designed to be a percussive guttural thing. And I think it's kind of unpleasant, especially when just for a second that the choir joins back in for just a momentary flavory taste. And then it's that against his screams, and you're like, no, I don't like it even more.
Yeah. But then it gets a lot better towards the end.
So the end, it becomes a different song.
It becomes an awesome song.
Yes.
Is what happens. Like, the drummer throws in some double kicks for once, and then the choir's like, ha, 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 like, these, like, intense little...
Absolutely.
Not little. These intense, like, chords, and... It's awesome section of the song, and I'm like, where was this the whole time?
Absolutely. So the way we do this is when we listen to the album, every time we listen to it, we write more notes on it. And so let me tell you the note I wrote the first time I heard the second half of this song. New riff, new growled vocal, new choir chanting, double kicks in the outro with slow haunting guitar lead, then descending triplets, then death? Because it's just, like, it's crazy. Like I said, that riff comes in so heavy. And like I said, the growled vocal is different. And the choir, you said, was like, it's just so tense and so, like, and with the double kicks, you just feel the...
It's a really cool section of the song.
It almost gets your adrenaline going. You're so, like, there. And it's so scary. And, like, the guitar lead's there. And then right before the end of the song, it goes, the descending triplets. That are just really, like I said, the whole thing is coming to, like, a head. And then someone loses their head. Like, they deliberately go out of their way to make this sort of, like, shing! With, like, a sword and then a body falling over. And it's just, it's super intense and just crazy.
Yeah, dramatic. Definitely a song that's, like, building the whole time.
Absolutely. And that I think that intro is, that end area is one of the best, like, parts of the whole album.
If I could pick, like, one, like, section of a song, that's probably my favorite, like, song section overall.
Absolutely, I agree. And so speaking of last sections, let's move on just to the last song, which is The Manifest, Epilogue.
The Manifest, Epilogue. Was it an appropriate epilogue?
It was. It once again showed off a lot of the elements that they did overall. It starts off a little slow. There's a long stretch of silence, and then there's the sounds of chains clanking, assumedly of a person who is enslaved. or a prisoner.
Yeah, and then we go to some instruments with that old record filter again.
Yeah, that gentle sort of haunting strings that has appeared multiple times. It's definitely a theme throughout. It's definitely, now that I've listened to it 3 or 4 times, I'm like, oh wow, it really does all like click together really well. And then we hear my man talking over a walkie-talkie, but when the song starts in earnest.
There's a slow drum fill into a guitar solo.
And we both literally said, when did Santana get here? Because no joke, it just has that sort of like, that smooth, round sexiness for a minute.
Yeah, and it's like, well, that was an unexpected guitar tone / like feeling.
Yeah, exactly. And the fact that we both just thought that, I'd be like, if I just thought it, I thought maybe I'm just being a dingus.
No, but I seriously thought the same thing. I'm like, why would this make me think of Santana?
But then it has that great, that, like you were saying earlier, that sort of like, that sort of like pause timing where it goes, it has that, and it's so strange and unique, and you can't help but focus on it.
Yeah. No, and like that makes this all another really cool solo.
But my thing is, then it has what I called a build down into the verse.
Yeah, step down is what I called it.
Because it does the dun 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 like like a build up.
Yeah.
But then it just goes the energy down into the verse.
Yeah.
Which has this like really like nice high pitch, like the bass riffing you can hear throughout. This whole album has like amazing bass riffing you hear throughout. And you can really hear it, I feel like, under this verse. And the verse has like this sort of spoken word thing to it again, where he talks about like how God has already moved on to the next state of being, and how mankind has been abandoned, and all that. And I understand you're trying to wrap up the story. But it's like you said earlier, talking, music.
Yeah, the thing is, like, I feel like it's not necessary to describe the theme of the album when, in theory, the album should just speak for itself. And, like, it's, a lot of the songs are pretty straightforward about their theme. It's not like it's weird, abstract, poetic business. I mean, it's poetic, but, like, not... But it's direct. And so it's not really necessary to, like, summarize it at the end, I feel like.
Now, I will say, the chorus was great of this one, with its slower, bigger riffing, and the full choir coming back, and everything. It really...
But the choir isn't overpowering like it can be. Sometimes it's like a quiet intensity.
The thing is, it's not huge, it's just right.
Yeah.
It's just where it needs to be, it's just the strength it needs to be. They're all providing just like... They're not like, ah! They're just... they're providing the true human feeling that you get when you sing together with other people. It definitely has that feeling to it. So speaking of feeling, overall, this album, what did you think?
I liked it. Like, I liked it more the more I listened to it.
And you're
like,
exactly right.
Every repeat of the album, I'm just like, wow, I like this more upon listening to it second, third, fourth time, whatever. Like, every single song I liked more the more I listened to it. So I guess that's a really good sign. Because, like, I think the first time I was, like, a little thrown off because it's just... I didn't know... I had no expectations because I'm like, I don't know what this is going to sound like. And so it was just something new on the ear.
Good on you, Jabrain.
Yeah. Good recommendation.
So, yeah, I would say, like, I'd never heard of anything... Like I said, they were described as pioneers of Oriental metal, and they're like I said, they're Israeli heavy metal band. I'd never heard of Orphaned Land before, and I was just like, I have no idea what to think about this. Yeah. But I was, like, honestly, very surprised. I loved how well they blended electric guitars and modern drumming techniques with classic folk styling. Like, at no point did they really feel like, oh man, like the guitars are really overpowering the sort of acoustics here, or man, that acoustic riff is just really like, it's really standing out against the drums.
Yeah. Well, and it does perfectly, like, what I hate about a lot of, like, symphonic metal is that they're just kind of, like, glued together, or that there's, like, the symphonic part is too synth and, like, whatever.
Like, this all felt very natural and real.
It's all very real, and, like, it's great.
Yeah, no, I was actually said, every time we listened to this, I liked it more. So by the what was it, like third or fourth time, I was just like, you know what, I'm into this. And then, with discussing it with you now, that's why we started the YouTube channel. I was like, let's discuss music because it's fun. Now that we've discussed it, I'm like, yeah, you're right. That element of it was really cool, and I really enjoyed it. So now I feel like that would translate very well to other people. So, what were your top 3 songs?
Okay, so my top 3 were my third was like Orpheus.
Okay, I understand that.
Just I liked it.
Okay.
I like the power. Like, I usually don't like... I'm not a power metal fan, but I liked it in this context.
Because it was right for him. It was right for the guitar players. It was right for the attitude of the whole album.
Yeah. Yeah. And then my second favorite was Take My Hand.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely agree with you.
Because,
like
we said when we were talking about it, on it. And just... It's got that, like, more unique riff that's, like, the heavier riff.
Absolutely. No, it's awesome.
And then my first favorite was Left Behind.
Left Behind, really?
Yeah. Just because I love the chorus of that song. It's so powerful.
It is. That is truly, like, the more, like, we went back and listened to it, because we listened to the songs also just before we review them. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, you've probably seen in the outtakes videos of that. But, so when we listened to it again, we were both just like, yeah! Ah! So I'm completely there with you. For me, Left Behind was my third favorite. Because it was just, it was good, it was exactly what it needed to be, but that radio filter kind of like on the verse kind of just like, messed it out for me. My second favorite was Only the Dead Have Seen the End of War, because it has those big epic choruses, that death metal vocal over that scaly riff that I just absolutely loved to death. It had the ending that was just progressively faster and faster and more intense, and just so much, just the dude dies. I'm like, that's metal. That's where metal is supposed to come from. Metal comes from war, metal comes from death, metal comes from anger. Some kinds of metal, of course. Yeah. And that was exactly what I wanted from it. And then my number one favorite was The All-Knowing Eye. Of
course.
Because that solo...
It is a great solo.
And that sort of really lilting, rocking, like second half of the song, it's just spoke to me on like a deep...
I watched level. You listen to it. It was a sight.
Yeah, and it's just it was so good, and I absolutely loved it to death, and it felt so like intense and powerful and beautiful that I absolutely loved it. Did you have a bottom three?
It would be hard to choose a bottom three, honestly, because all of these songs kind of like... After my first listen, I'm like, oh, all these songs sound the same, but now I'm like, no, they all sound different and unique. Like, each one's different.
It's interesting how that totally changed. I will say that if I had to pick a bottom one, because I honestly don't want to. It's kind of weird how I honestly don't want to pick a bottom one.
I would say, like, it's kind of a cop-out, but I would say the last song.
The Manifest Epilogue?
Just because it's just, like, the spoken summary of it is like, okay, that's just kind of unnecessary.
Well, I was wondering if you're going to go for that or My Brother's Keeper, which had the verse that was all the spoken.
Yeah, that would be my other possibility for least favorite, but...
But, like, honestly...
There were positives to both of those songs as well. So.
The thing is, honestly, we didn't want to think of that many bad things. So, frankly, what would you rate this album scale in 10?
Like, 7?
I'd give it an 8, actually. I think it's so... And I think from someone else who is much more into this sort of genre, I would say that it would probably
get how much is in this genre? I'm not
I don't know. Oriental metal. Please let us know. If you know more Oriental metal, please link it in the comments. I would love to hear more of it. I'm sure to them it's probably 9 or 10 because it's so well mixed. It's so well set up.
It is a good quality.
The themes, as we said, the sort of circular themes running throughout are great, and they all work. So I said I definitely give it an 8. And would you recommend this to anyone else?
Yeah, definitely. Like, I wouldn't. I don't even have a type of person because the thing is, it's not a type of music.
I've never heard this before.
Yeah. Like, especially if you're already predisposed to folk metal in general, like, definitely you'll like it.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
But really, like, give it a try. Like, you might like it, you might not, but it's interesting. You'll be interested, at least. I
will say, if you're going to recommend someone else, recommend they listen to it at least 2 to 3 times, because I feel like, honestly, you don't get it until you have.
Yeah.
Like, I know that's kind of pretentious and silly to say, but honestly, I didn't get it until, like, a third listen. I really didn't. Are you going to keep this on your iPod?
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah, actually, I don't have it on my iPod because you're listening with yours, but I will definitely add this because this is good stuff. Like, honestly, I'm going to go back and go back and listen to their older stuff.
Yeah, no, I totally would. They what, like 4 albums?
I think they have 4 or 5.
And like a couple EPs too.
Yeah, so I'm definitely going to go and look at that. Especially if it's anything like this, then it must be fantastic. And I don't know how I haven't heard of them, especially if they're pioneering a genre that's good. So I've never heard of Oriental metal, but they're pioneering it. And it's doing really... And I think this should be super popular, and I guess maybe it is outside of us.
It might end up being a niche thing, because it is an interesting intersection of several different genres.
Yes, but I think it's fantastic, and yeah, so that's all I can say about it.
Yeah.
In the end, everybody's a critic, including us. Bye-bye. Jabrain! Jabrain!